There's this thinking out there that's very common actually in our culture that life should be this linear forward progression always to better and better and better. And there's no better time to be thinking about this than now, when it seems like as a society, especially here in the United States, we're going through a regression. It doesn't seem like we're progressing right at the moment. It seems like some of us feel like we're being dragged kicking and screaming back to the 1890s or whenever, back to the glory days, right? Not for me, but anyway. So what's the deal with this? Like, how can you reconcile these two models? The model versus the reality, the mental model that it should always be a forward progression, and the disappointment that so many of us feel that it seems like we're being dragged back, the evidence speaking to the model and saying the model is BS. The model is really BS. And I think it's that in our society, life, I don't believe that we are here on this planet just to experience like better and better conditions all the time, to just have it be good all the time. And I'm here by the lake, and by the way, I want to show this cool little thing, if I can, let's see if I can show it. Hopefully you can see that pyramid there. Kind of a cool pyramid somebody built right here by the lake. So I wanted, to use as an example, lake water. Like, I'm thinking of going and jumping in this, and it's getting towards fall as I'm recording this. And so it's going to be a little bit chilly. And, if you were trying to go for perfection, if you're trying to go for linear progression, this lake would be like just the perfect temperature. And I would only go in when it's the perfect temperature. And if this lake isn't the right temperature, then I would go travel. I'd go get in a big jet airplane and travel across to maybe the Mediterranean or wherever there's the perfect temperature oceans, and everything would be wonderful and life is beautiful all of the time. Such BS. It's such a fantasy. No, I'm gonna go jump in this lake after making this video, because I've found that the cold, like literally biologically, cold exposure resets our metabolism. It actually does something to our metabolism that makes our metabolism function better. Periodic, like cold exposure like that. Cold shock is what they call it. It doesn't mean actually going into literal shock, but there are these cellular response systems. They're both heat shock systems and cold shock systems in our cells. And when we activate some of those cold shock systems, it actually improves our metabolism. But for me personally, it makes me feel better. After I do it, I feel better. But when I'm doing it, it kind of sucks. When I'm getting in that cold water and taking that first dive in, and it's, why did I do this? What was I thinking, right? And think about that perspective on your life, and especially think about that perspective on what is happening in our world right now. And especially, again, if you're here in the United States, think about that. Like, if life is a little bit different, if sometimes we need those sort of shocks to the system in order to improve, in order to grow. And I truly believe that. Like, all of my growth in my life has not come from the times when everything was wonderful and beautiful and the numbers all looked good and I had, lots of funding, whether it was as a scientist, grant funding, or as a business owner, monetary, like cash flow, whatever. Like, those aren't the times when I grew and I learned. It was when I was about to give up. And instead of giving up, I was like, really? Do I have to do this? Okay, whatever. Palm against head, and then buckling down and frickin' doing the thing, whatever it is that I needed to do. Whatever new creative idea or person that I needed to call, or thing I needed to say, or thing I needed to do. And then suddenly something clicks and it's, oh, that worked. And then you feel fulfilled and proud afterwards, but it was pretty miserable going through it. It's like some river trips. I do a lot of wilderness kayaking, and same thing. Like, sometimes you go on a trip, and it's just like, at the time, it's like there are moments of misery, if not the whole thing sometimes. I remember one morning waking up, kayaking, and in a remote wilderness river, a class 4 or 5 kayaking run, and literally my wetsuit gloves were so frozen overnight that I couldn't put my hands in because they were like frozen solid, like the water that we had taken off the river late the night before, so they hadn't dried out, so they just froze solid. Couldn't get my hands in them. The only way I could defrost them, because the sun hadn't even come down into the place we were yet, the only way I could defrost them was stick them in the water that was barely above freezing. Like literally stick them into like 34-degree water to defrost the gloves and then put them on. I remember that. It was not pleasant, but at the same time, it's also a fond memory, like getting through situations like that. There's so much growth, there's so much life experience that comes through doing that, through pushing yourself. But most of us in our society, we don't push ourselves. We don't push ourselves to change. And that has been the problem here in the United States, is that we had it pretty good, but everybody's kind of dissatisfied with the status quo, but we had it pretty good. It was comfortable, but a lot of people were dissatisfied with the status quo. But who's gonna change? It's too much pain to change it. Like, we'd have to fight, okay, whatever. I'll just put my head down and keep doing. So, society reflects what a lot of us individuals are doing. And I think our society, we got comfortable, we got kind of lazy, we took things for granted, and now we got a shock to the system happening. And it's like the same head palm thing, like, really? Like, come on, seriously, people? We're doing this? Like, really? We have to do this? But in the end, I am an optimist. I'm not saying that it's all gonna be pretty and beautiful and wonderful out there for all of us for however long this shock to the system takes. But I also think that we can come out of the other side stronger, better. We can have a better metabolism. We can get rid of some of the problems, the malaise, the sort of laziness, the taking things for granted that we had. And when you have, just like, it's so amazing when you actually think about life in America, especially before the most recent stuff started happening. When you think about, like, you can go on Amazon, even if you live in a fairly remote place, you can go on Amazon and literally like order it and have almost anything you could possibly want on your doorstep within 2, maybe 3 days. If it's 4, you're like, at least me, you're pissed off. You're like, where's my thing, my widget that I ordered from China? Why didn't it show up like within on time? What's the problem with these people? Like, taking all of that for granted. Like, I'm reading the Wheel of Time fantasy series, which is set in a setting that's similar to maybe the mid-1800s America, US, something like that, or Europe. Man, communicating, like, something happens a few hundred miles away and it could take weeks before you even hear about it, before you even know anything happened. And some people may never hear that happened until they show up, and then there's something bad going on there, and then whatever. The point is that, like, it is so life has been amazingly easy for us in so many ways, and yet so many of us were discontent. How can that be? I think it's like, another metaphor that I like related to water is that I like sometimes soaking in the hot tub, especially in the winter when there's a lot of snow. And when you soak in the hot tub, it's great for the first 10 or 15 minutes, but soak in there for 2 hours and it sucks. Soak in there for 6 hours and you're probably dead, right? Because you're overheated. So something that's nice can become something that's very not nice without that contrast, without experiencing some different aspect of things, some different way of things being, to really realize how good that thing is. So if you're cold, jumping in that hot tub, it's great. It's a great contrast. But after you've been there for a little while, it's like, no, I gotta get out. I gotta get back to where I can cool off and experience the cold. Bottom line message is that I think as individuals and as a society, we would be so much better off if we could get it out of our heads that there's just this linear progression, that things are always going to seem to get better. That we can have it too good and we can take it for granted, and it's just like getting into that nice warm water. Maybe it's not a hot tub, getting into the nice warm water and it's perfect temperature, and then we just sit there, and then it's like, well, how long can you sit there in the nice warm water before you're just kind of like, what am I doing here? Like, this is boring. This is, and then you just take it for granted. We've got to understand life needs challenges. Society needs challenges. And it's just too bad that we waited so long, because I think because we waited so long, because we were stuck in that sort of malaise and that comfort for so long here in the United States, I think this one's kind of a big event, a much bigger event than it would have been if we had taken care of it sooner, if we had jumped in the cold water a little bit and done a little bit of a reset of that metabolism. So that's the message for today. I hope you find it helpful. Please like, please subscribe. It's awesome when you do that. We're building a community here of awesome people who like to think, but who also like to tune into things like your intuition and just try to make sense of all of the crazy that is going on out there from a somewhat higher perspective, not just by accepting the old boxes of logic that we've been given. If you're excited about that, subscribe, like, comment, and I will see you soon.